Before you learn all the dark details of the giraffe story, I'll start at the beginning of how my wife came to this. My name is Alex, and until 6 months ago, I thought I knew my wife better than anyone in the world. 15 years of marriage will give you that illusion, the comfortable certainty that you've mapped every contour of someone's personality. Janet and I had that kind of relationship. Stable, predictable, the kind our friends envied. Then Africa happened, and now I'm not sure I ever knew her at all. Let me tell you something about marriage that most relationship books won't admit. It's not the obvious threats that get you. It's not the late nights at the office or the attractive neighbor. No, the real dangers are the ones you never see coming. Like your practical, level-headed wife returning from Africa with mystical giraffe visions and a confession that knocks your entire reality sideways. Janet's a veterinary nurse, methodical, precise, with a gift for difficult animals. I used to joke that she had animal telepathy. That joke would come back to haunt me in ways I never could have imagined. It started innocently enough. Janet's co-worker Sarah broke her ankle 2 weeks before a scheduled volunteer trip to a wildlife conservancy in Kenya. Janet, despite being the least spontaneous person I've ever known, surprised everyone by offering to take her place. "It's only 4 weeks," she said over breakfast. "A professional development opportunity. I'll learn techniques for working with exotic animals." I supported her, of course. Why wouldn't I? After 15 years of her supporting my career moves, this was her turn for an adventure. Besides, our marriage was rock solid. 4 weeks apart would be nothing. Her first 2 weeks of emails were exactly what you'd expect. Excited descriptions of the conservancy, the animals, the landscape. She'd been assigned to work with giraffes, which seemed fitting. Janet had always been drawn to the quiet, dignified animals. In particular, she mentioned an older giraffe named Mbali. "There's something special about him," she wrote. "Dr. Kambal says he's been here nearly a decade. He's different from the others, more watchful, more present somehow." I didn't think much of it at the time. Janet always connected deeply with animals. Then her emails changed, became shorter, more distracted. Our calls grew less frequent, and when we did talk, she seemed distant, preoccupied. "Everything okay?" I asked during one particularly stilted conversation. "Fine," she said. "Just busy, and it's intense here, in ways I hadn't expected." She extended her stay by 2 weeks, then another month. I was surprised but not alarmed. This was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and I wanted her to make the most of it. When she finally came home, I knew instantly that something had changed. Not just the sun-darkened skin or the new, leaner physique. There was something different behind her eyes. A watchfulness, a depth that hadn't been there before, like she was constantly processing something just out of sight. "Welcome home, stranger," I said, trying to keep things light as we drove from the airport. "Africa agreed with you." She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "I missed you." It sounded like a line she was supposed to say rather than something she felt. That was the first real pang of unease. A week after her return, I found her, sitting on our back porch at 3 in the morning, staring at the moon with unsettling intensity. "I need to tell you something, Alex, something that happened in Kenya." My heart sank. In that moment, I knew, or thought I knew, what was coming. An affair. The classic story. Western woman goes to exotic locale, meets handsome local, returns home to shatter her marriage. What Janet actually told me was so much stranger. "It's about Mbali," she said, "the giraffe I wrote to you about." For the next 3 hours, Janet unfolded a tale so bizarre, so seemingly impossible, that my first instinct was to check her for signs of fever. A mystical giraffe that had guided her to buried treasure, ancient Maasai artifacts, visions of the past, a pendant that connected her to memories that weren't her own. She showed me the pendant, a circular wooden piece with intricate carvings and a small amber stone at its center. "Janet," I said carefully, "is it possible that the stress of being in a new environment, the isolation—" "Don't," she cut me off. Don't patronize me. I've spent months questioning my own sanity. I'm not asking you to believe in magic. I'm asking you to believe that something happened to me that I can't fully explain. She was right. I was being condescending. But come on. A mystical giraffe guardian? It was absurd. Okay, I said. Tell me the whole story, from the beginning. Don't leave anything out. And so she did. How Mbali had behaved strangely, always looking toward the eastern boundary of the conservancy. How she'd followed him one dawn and discovered a buried metal box containing the pendant and a letter from a Maasai man named Lenana. How wearing the pendant had triggered visions of Mbali's life with the Maasai community decades earlier. It was compelling the way she told it. Janet had always been practical, grounded, skeptical of anything that couldn't be empirically verified. To hear her speak with such conviction about experiences that defied rational explanation was unsettling, but there was something else in her story, something she was holding back. "Janet," I said gently, "what aren't you telling me?" She looked down at her hands, twisting the pendant's leather cord between her fingers. "There's something else that happened. Someone I met." Ah, there it was. The other shoe, finally dropping. His name was Keto. Not a dramatic safari guide or rugged conservationist, but a local historian who'd helped Janet research the Maasai community that had once lived near the conservancy. "It wasn't planned," Janet said, her voice small. "It just happened once, well, a few times." The betrayal hit like a physical blow, but I kept my face neutral. I'd suspected as much, hadn't I? "I'm not proud of it," she continued, "but I need you to understand. It wasn't about sex. It was about what was happening to me. The visions. The connection to Mbali. Keto was the only one who didn't look at me like I was losing my mind. So you slept with him because he validated your giraffe visions." I couldn't keep the bitterness from my voice. Janet flinched. "That's not fair." "None of this is fair, Janet." We sat in silence for a long moment, the first light of dawn beginning to outline the trees in our yard. "I'm sorry," she finally said, "but I can't pretend it didn't happen, any of it. The affair or the experiences with Mbali. They're both part of what happened to me in Kenya, and they're both parts of who I am now. I need time," I said, "to process all of this." She nodded and went inside, leaving me alone on the porch as the sun rose on a world that suddenly seemed much stranger and less certain than it had been just hours before. You know what they never tell you about devastating revelations? It's not the initial shock that breaks you. It's the quiet moments afterward. Washing dishes while wondering if your entire marriage was a lie, or catching your reflection in the bathroom mirror and realizing you don't recognize the person staring back. The next few weeks were complicated. I moved into our spare bedroom. We established an uneasy routine of polite distance. I read books about giraffes, about Maasai culture, about the phenomena of cultural memories. Anything that might help me make sense of Janet's experiences without having to accept them at face value. Janet gave me space but remained steadfast in her account. "I'm not asking you to forgive the affair right away," she said, "but I need you to at least consider the possibility that what happened with Mbali was real." It seemed like such a strange thing to fixate on. Her mystical connection with a giraffe seemed far less significant than her broken vows. But for Janet, the two were inextricably linked, two aspects of a transformative experience that had fundamentally changed her. One night, about a month after her confession, I found myself unable to sleep. Our house felt too small, too confined. I drove to a nearby nature preserve, nothing like the Kenyan savanna, just a modest patch of protected woodland. But it was open. It had stars. I sat on a bench in the observation area, turned off my flashlight, and let my eyes adjust to the darkness. And there, at the edge of the clearing, stood a deer, a young buck with small antlers, barely visible in the dim moonlight. Instead of running, it simply watched me. We stayed like that for what felt like hours, but was probably only minutes, just looking at each other across the clearing. Animal and human, connected by nothing but shared awareness of each other's presence. It wasn't a mystical experience. I didn't receive visions of the deer's life, but sitting there, I felt something shift in my understanding, a recognition that there are forms of connection that exist outside of language, that perhaps the boundaries we draw between species, between past and present, between what we can explain and what we can only experience, are more permeable than I'd been willing to admit. When I walked in the door, Janet was there, also sleepless. She took one look at my face and said, "You went to the preserve." It wasn't a question. Somehow she knew. "Yes," I said. "I saw a deer." She nodded, like this was significant. And nothing mystical happened, I said honestly. "But I think I understand a little better now." She held out her hand, the pendant resting in her palm. "Would you like to try it?" I hesitated, then took the wooden disc. It felt warm, warmer than it should have been. I examined the intricate carving, the amber stone that caught the dim light of our entryway. Nothing happened. No visions. No ancient memories. "It doesn't work for everyone," Janet said softly, "and not all at once. It took time for me with Umbali." I handed it back. "I'm not ready to believe everything yet." "I know, but I'm trying." 3 weeks later, I woke drenched in sweat, images of gold-tinged savanna grass fading from my mind. The dreams had become more frequent, more vivid. This time, I'd seen a young Maasai man placing something around the neck of a juvenile giraffe, the same pendant. I knew it was Umbali before the thought even formed. I hadn't told Janet about the dreams. What would I say? That I was having second-hand mystical experiences related to my wife's affair/spiritual awakening? The next day I came home early to find Janet on a video call. She ended it abruptly when she saw me. Too abruptly. I caught a glimpse of a man's face on the screen. "Who was that?" I tried to keep my voice neutral, but jealousy flared hot. And immediate. "Dr. Kambale," she said, a beat too quickly. "Checking in about Umbali. How is he? Umbali, I mean. Not good." She twisted the pendant between her fingers. "Alex, there's something I've been wanting to ask you. Would you consider going back with me to Kenya? Just for a week or two?" The request blindsided me. Return to the place where my wife had her affair? Why would I do that? Because you're having the dreams too. I know you are. I can see it in your face in the mornings. I froze. "How did you?" "The same thing happened to me at first, before the full visions." She leaned forward, eyes intense. "What if this isn't just about me? What if there's a reason you're being drawn into this too?" "I'm not being drawn into anything," I said, backpedaling hard. "They're just dreams." But even as I denied it, a part of me wondered. The dreams felt different, more vivid, more coherent, and they came with sensations that lingered after waking. The heat of the African sun, the smell of dust and grass, the peculiar silence of vast open spaces. That night, I searched for Quito online. I found him. Mid-30s, with intelligent eyes and quiet confidence. He'd published papers on Maasai cultural history and worked with the Conservancy on preserving indigenous knowledge systems. I stared at his photo, searching for what Janet had seen in him. He wasn't movie star handsome, but there was something compelling about his face. As I fell into uneasy sleep, the dreams came again, stronger this time. I was riding a giraffe, Mbali. We were moving rapidly across the savannah, toward what looked like a cluster of traditional dome-shaped dwellings. I could feel urgency, fear. Something was wrong. I woke gasping, the pendant clutched in my hand. Wait. The pendant? I stared at the wooden disc in my palm, confusion giving way to alarm. I hadn't taken it from Janet, yet here it was, warm and solid in my hand. I stumbled across the hall to our bedroom. "Janet, the pendant." The room was empty, bed made, no sign of her. My phone showed 3:17 a.m. Where would she be at this hour? Her car keys were gone. I called her cell, straight to voicemail. I was about to call the police when my phone rang. An international number. "Hello?" I answered, voice tight with fear. Mr. Harmon, this is Dr. Morris Kambale from the Kikuyu Wildlife Conservancy. My stomach dropped. What's happened? Is Janet all right? Physically, yes, he said, his accented voice calm but serious. But we have a situation. She arrived here unexpectedly yesterday. Yesterday? That's impossible. I just spoke to her a few hours ago. Mr. Harmon, your wife has been in Kenya for nearly 24 hours. The world tilted sideways. Had I imagined our conversation? Why are you calling me? I managed to ask. Because Mbali is dying, Dr. Kambale said simply. And Janet believes you need to be here when it happens. The next 48 hours passed in a blur of hurried arrangements and long flights. I still had the pendant, inexplicably, though I'd found Janet's hanging by her jewelry box, meaning there were somehow two pendants now. As the small plane approached the Conservancy's airstrip, I stared at the landscape below, golden grasslands stretching to the horizon. My heart gave a strange lurch of recognition. Though I'd never been to Africa before, Dr. Kambale met me himself, a tall, dignified Kenyan man with kind eyes. Is she all right? I asked. Your wife is experiencing something profound. Whether psychological or spiritual is not for me to say. But she is mentally lucid. And Mbali? A shadow crossed his face. Near the end, I'm afraid. He led me to a fenced area where I saw them. Janet sitting cross-legged beside the largest creature I'd ever seen, in person. Mbali was lying down, his impossibly long legs folded beneath him, neck extended on the ground. Janet looked up, her face lighting with relief. You came. You left without telling me. I couldn't keep the hurt from my voice. I didn't have a choice. When I felt him starting to fade, I knew I had to be here. She frowned. You have it. The pendant. I pulled it from my pocket. I woke up with it in my hand, but your pendant was still in your jewelry box. She reached beneath her shirt and pulled out an identical wooden disc. They've multiplied. Dr. Kambale's eyebrows rose. This is unexpected. Nothing about this is expected, I said. Janet, what the hell is going on? Why am I here? Because he asked for you, Mbali, in the visions. He showed me you were connected too. I looked at the massive creature lying on the ground. His eye, large and dark, seemed to be watching our conversation with intelligent interest.
5 minutes, Janet said. Just give him 5 minutes. Alone. I approached Mbali cautiously. Up close, he was magnificent. His coat a complex mosaic of geometric patterns, his eyelashes absurdly long, his presence undeniably powerful despite
his weakened state. So, I said awkwardly, I hear you wanted to see me. Without thinking, I knelt beside him, close enough to feel the heat radiating from his massive body. I don't know what I'm supposed to do here, I admitted. I've been having dreams, but I don't understand them. The giraffe's eye fixed on me, unblinking. Then, with obvious effort, he lifted his head slightly, just enough to bump his muzzle against my chest, where the pendant lay. Hesitantly, I pulled out the pendant. Mbali made a rumbling sound, then lowered his head to rest on the ground. The moment his eye closed, it happened. The world dissolved around me, reforming into a different time, a different place. I was experiencing things as if Mbali's body were my own, the peculiar, rocking gait, the height giving a vantage point no human could have. We were racing toward a village. Raiders were coming. I could see the dust cloud of their approach. The memory shifted. Now Mbali, stood in the center of the village as people rushed to gather belongings, children, elderly. A man approached, young, proud, with fierce eyes. Lanana. He placed something around Mbali's neck, the pendant, and spoke words in a language I shouldn't have understood, but somehow did. Guard what cannot be taken. Remember what must not be forgotten. Another shift. Years compressed into moments. The village abandoned during drought. Mbali staying behind, watching over the empty dwellings. Years of solitude. Years of watching. Years of carrying memories no one else kept. Then Janet, her arrival like a spark in the darkness. recognition, not of her specifically, but of something in her, an openness, the pendant calling to be found, its memories seeking new vessels as its original guardian weakened. And now me. Connected through Janet, through some invisible thread of shared consciousness I couldn't comprehend. I gasped as the visions receded. Umbali's eye was open again, watching me with what I could only interpret as satisfaction. "You saw," Janet said. "It wasn't a question." I nodded, unable to speak. "He was a guardian," I managed eventually, "of the Maasai village that was here before. He protected them, warned them of dangers, and when they left, he stayed to remember." Dr. Campbell looked thoughtful. "There are stories in many cultures about animals who serve as vessels for knowledge. Western science dismisses these as superstition, but perhaps there are forms of connection we have forgotten how to recognize." We stayed with Umbali through the night. Near dawn, his breathing became shallower. Janet took my hand across his massive neck. "He's going," she whispered. As the first light touched the eastern horizon, the direction Umbali had watched for so many years, the great giraffe took one final breath, held it, then released it in a soft sigh. I felt something pass between us in that moment, Janet, Umbali, and me. Not just grief, but a sense of completion, of torch passed. "I'm sorry," Janet said after a long silence, "for everything. For Keto." The name still stung, but less sharply than before. "Did he know about Umbali, the visions?" She shook her head. "I never told him. That part was just between Umbali and me, and now you." "Why me? Why did Umbali connect with me too?" "I think he recognized that we were connected, that the guardianship needed both of us." "Guardianship of what? The land is a conservancy now. There's no village to protect." "The memories," she said simply. "The knowledge that this place was sacred long before it was a conservation area. That the connection between humans and animals isn't just about dominion, but about shared consciousness." It sounded mystical, completely unlike the pragmatic Janet I'd married. And yet, having experienced Umbali's memories firsthand, I couldn't dismiss it. "What happens now?" I asked. She touched her pendant, then mine. "We remember. We guard what needs guarding." "Others like Keto?" I couldn't help asking. She met my eyes directly. "That was a mistake, born of confusion and the intensity of what I was experiencing." "How can I believe that?" "Because now you've felt it too. You know this isn't something I made up." She squeezed my hand. "And because we're in this together now, whether we wanted to be or not." As we walked away from Umbali's body, I felt a strange peace settling over me. Not forgiveness. That would take time, but understanding. Janet's experience hadn't been a rejection of our life together, but an expansion of it. "So we're what? Mystical giraffe memory keepers now?" I asked, attempting humor. Janet's laugh was soft but genuine. "Something like that." As we approached the main building, a man stood on the porch, tall, with confident posture. My stomach tightened as I recognized him from the photos. Keto Janet, tensed beside me. I didn't invite him. He must have heard about Umbali. His eyes moved from Janet to me, recognition flashing when he saw our matching pendants. "Janet," he said, his accent lighter than I'd imagined. "Dr. Campbell called about Umbali. I'm sorry." An awkward silence settled between us, heavy with unspoken history. "You must be Alex," he said, extending his hand. "I've heard about you." "I bet you have," I thought, but forced myself to shake his hand. "Wish I could say the same." Dr. Campbell emerged, breaking the tension. "Keto has been documenting oral histories of the Maasai communities that once lived here. If you're willing to share what Umbali showed you, it could add valuable context." Keto gestured to our pendants. "My grandmother spoke of such things. Vessels of memory, she called them. Objects that could hold experiences across generations." You never mentioned this before, Janet said, surprise evident. There are aspects of our traditions we do not share easily with outsiders, even those we care for. The way he said care for made my jaw clench. Inside, Quito remained standing, his posture tense. You've both experienced the visions, he said. It wasn't a question. Yes, I confirmed. Memories from Mbali's perspective, the Maasai village, a man named Lanana. Quito's eyes widened. Lanana o Lanana, you saw him. You know the name? Janet asked. He was my great-grandfather. The revelation landed like a physical blow. I stared at Quito, suddenly seeing his features in a new light, comparing them to the fierce-eyed young man I'd seen through Mbali's memories. That's impossible, I said, though after what I'd experienced, impossible had lost much of its meaning. Is it? Quito found an old photograph and brought it to us. This is Lanana, taken in 1985, and in the background, just visible at the edge of the frame, was the distinctive pattern of a giraffe's coat. You knew, Janet said, her voice barely above a whisper. You knew about Mbali all along. Quito looked ashamed. Not at first. When you started asking questions, I thought you were just another curious Westerner. But then you mentioned the giraffe's behavior, how he always looked east. Why didn't you tell me? Janet's voice carried a note of betrayal. Would you have believed me? A local man telling tales of mystical animal guardians? Or maybe, I interjected, you saw an opportunity to manipulate the situation, to get close to Janet. You think I seduced your wife to access her visions? Quito's eyes flashed. Enough, Dr. Campbell cut in. Whatever personal grievances exist, they are secondary to what has occurred here. A being that carried cultural memory for generations has passed. That knowledge has been transferred to new guardians. He nodded to Janet and me. This is not a moment for petty jealousies. The reprimand stung, but it was deserved. My grandmother believed such knowledge would become crucial again, Quito said, as the world faces ecological crises of its own making, as the consequences of separation from nature become impossible to ignore. That evening, Janet led me to a hill overlooking where Mbali had died. As dusk deepened, the grasslands below began to shimmer with tiny points of light, thousands of fireflies rising from the grasses, converging on the spot where Mbali had drawn his last breath. They don't normally emerge in such numbers, Janet said softly. Dr. Campbell says he's never seen anything like it. Without thinking, I reached for Janet's hand. She intertwined her fingers with mine. I don't know if I can forgive the affair, I said honestly. I know. And I don't know if I can fully believe in all of this, the guardianship, any of it. She squeezed my hand gently. I know that too. But I felt something, through Mbali, something real. I turned to face her, and whatever it was, whatever it means, we both experienced it. It connects us, even as other things have come between us. Janet's eyes glistened with unshed tears. Is that enough? To build on, I mean? I didn't have an answer. The wound of her infidelity was still raw, the shock of these supernatural experiences still reverberating through my understanding of reality. But standing there, watching the fireflies trace luminous patterns across the savannah, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel again. Possibility. I don't know, I said honestly, but I'm willing to find out. She nodded, accepting this tentative olive branch for what it was. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but an opening. As we descended the hill in companionable silence, pendants, gleaming faintly in the starlight, I felt something Mbali had carried for decades, a patient certainty that some connections transcend understanding, that some bonds once formed cannot be broken but only transformed.